welcome to the third season of Hiire Talks. This is the first episode that we are doing on this season, and I'm very, very excited because we have two awesome guests here, Inês Silva from Jerónimo and Miguel Luís from the Key Talent. So two experts on employer branding, even though I'm not sure if they would consider themselves experts. I know they are. So let's see from now on if they keep the standard, but I believe they will. And as you know, this subject, employer branding, I think in 2025 will help us not only to attract more talent, but also to keep the talents that organizations already have. And we have here both sides of the equation. So the corporate side of employer branding with Jerónimo Martins, and also the consulting side as well, that is super important. And I will go directly to business because I want to produce a lot of juice for our viewers. And I would like to start with Inês. So if you could describe in one sentence, Inês, how would you define employer branding to someone outside of our world? How would you put it?
So employer brand. So employer brand is how people perceive an employer. So it is how, for example, the Jerónimo Martins employer brand is how a prospect candidate perceives Jerónimo Martins as an employer. And so employer branding is all about perception, is all about what we're able to sell, how the experience of working at Jerónimo Martins is. So it's a translation of the experience of working in a company, I would say.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I think you touched on the right point, the perception, because the reality usually it's one thing that people read on it, but then we have the perceptions of others and how they see it from outside. Would you add something on this description, Miguel?
Yeah, for sure. Just a small context, because I think it's really, really important to understand how employer branding came to be. And I know most people that are listening probably don't know, but employer branding is really, really recent. So the first time it was mentioned is 92, and the first book was written in 96. And how it came to be is you had a guy that was a product manager. So it really emerged from the marketing side. And that guy, he had a problem. Things always come up with a problem. So the problem was that he needed to hire someone. And then he got in touch with the HR side of the company, and he looked at the recruitment process, and it was awful. It was awful. So from the marketing point of view, what he looked at was it didn't make any sense for him. Because imagine, as a product manager, he would try to sell the product to the prospect buyer of that product. And as you know, Gonçalo, recruitment, if you go to the 90s, most of the recruitment was done like sending a fish net to the sea, and everyone that came into the fish net was a good candidate. So what this didn't make sense to him, because it had lots of cost. If you had to do all, you need to look at each and every candidate that would come in, and that for him didn't make any sense. So it's all about perception. That's real. That's true. It started with recruitment. So I would just like to add that employer branding started with recruitment, but it evolved so much since the 90s. So nowadays, employer branding is so much more than just recruitment, the recruitment side. And like Inês said, it's when we talk about perception, it's the perception of three different audiences. So the first one is top management, and the perception that they want to send to the outside world of what the brand should be. The second one is the employees and what the experience really is within the company. And the third one is the candidate. And that is the perception that they have from the outside world, from all the touch points that they look, from the experience from within the company. So I would just say that it's something like this.
Very complex.
Yeah, very, very complex and very good explanation, Miguel. Thanks for that context, because I think it's awesome to start here. And I think you highlight one thing really well. We have three main stakeholders, like the stakeholders, the investors, the employees, and the candidates or future employees. So I think it's a very good setup point for people that are watching to really understand what we are talking about and the impact that employer branding can have in the end of the day. I think you already spoke a little bit about how employer branding evolved over the past few years. And I'm also curious, Inês, how you saw it as well at Jerónimo Martins in terms of involvement, which things are different nowadays that were different a couple of years ago.
Well, I think the main difference is that we came from, in the past years, the labor market changed immensely. So we were not fully in full employment a few years back. The people wanted to work, were looking actively working for jobs, and nowadays this is not the case. We are working in a global work environment, in a global labor market, and so companies need to step up, and we are the ones looking for talent, not the other way around, which was what was happening a few years back. And so the companies needed to adapt to this, and nowadays we look at employer branding as something that is strategic, and the war for talent is real. So this is a response that all companies need to have. Some are more evolved than others, of course, but it's something that we need to implement and need to strategically develop so that we are able to compete in this labor market. And so I think it's something that has evolved tremendously because labor market has evolved also. And with the new generations that are coming, the demands are very different. COVID was also a shifting point in terms of employer branding as well, because people's connection and relationship with work changed a lot as well. So employer branding needs to adapt constantly to these changes that occur in the world and the labor market, in people's expectations, and so it's something that is always changing.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Human beings are also always changing, so I think this trend ending
Yeah.
up to involve with them. And also regarding generations, we will have specific questions for that later, which I think they are quite interesting. But you touch in a point that I think it's very important because this is constantly evolving. But I'm also curious to understand what both of you think that a company needs to do to really being perceived as authentic company, and what can makes it feel fake. So in your opinion, I'm not sure who wants to go first, but in your opinion,
I can go,
yeah,
Gonçalo, no problem.
go for it.
So, just to give a little touch on the last question as well. Imagine when I first started in employer branding, there were only probably 3 or 4 people here in Portugal talking about the topic. Myself, Inês Veloso, probably, and a few others. Inês wrote a book. Inês Veloso from her own side wrote a book about it. But the evolution that we saw is, if you do a little research on LinkedIn nowadays, you see that we have in Portugal more than 2,000 people that say that they have an employer branding job at their company. 88% of those people work at the talent attraction side of the company. So it's almost, and this is not the usual. If you go to Europe and to other geographies, it's not everything, not all the other geographies are like this. It's normally 50-50 about marketing and HR. So there's a balance. But in regards to your question, in regards to how do you make it authentic or fake, and this I'm going to talk about my own experience when interacting with different companies here in Portugal. So there is still a struggle in regards to the usage of authentic content. When we talk about the usage, for instance, of workers, real workers within communication, not all companies are open to the usage of real workers, because there is obvious, and this is not, I'm not saying that it's a wrong option, because imagine if the employee goes out of the company, it could bring a problem. So it's not easy to make that option to go straight with internal employee content, or to go to a data bank, a photo data bank. So it's but what makes it more real or less real, it really comes up to this. Imagine I currently have 3 campaigns going for young talent, and I have one that has pictures from the trainees from last year, and the other two they have pictures from photo banks. And you can see the difference. So there is a difference, and you can see the difference. The main difference is even worse when you see the person that is the face of a company this year that is used, for instance, for a commercial ad the next year for a different brand. So uh, when we are walking and we see the content, it really makes a bad connection when you see that there's no effort, that the companies don't do that. Sometimes it's not about effort; it's really about legal stuff that goes beyond the branding side of the question. But I would say that is you can see really really well authenticity and fake, because authenticity is when you see that companies, they provide the effort, and they have like the copies of the publications that they do are really directed to target audiences, so segmentation is really well done. The pictures are really worked, so you understand that when you are looking at the picture, the company is looking for a specific target audience as well. So this makes it that you see that the company has put in the effort to acquire a specific target of people. Fake, normally it's like general content. Sometimes they talk about general stuff like sustainability. Lots of companies still going on about sustainability as an overall concept. You also keep seeing something that I thought would end in the beginning of the 2000s, that is hiring communication companies just to do great videos, like if the video was the pill that would solve everything in regards to the image that the company has. So videos are not the answer to every problem that in the attraction side of the company. So authenticity and fake is really about the effort that the companies put in all these subjects.
And I would add two things, if I might, Miguel. It's I think we see a lot of companies in Portugal. We are still not in Portugal. I think there's still we are still very conservative to a certain point, but more and more so. The companies are state of the art in terms of employer branding. They are looking at employee advocacy, because
For sure.
at the end of the day, we are selling a product, and when you go to buy a product at Amazon, you look at the reviews, and so you're more so looking at what, not what the seller is saying, but what the people that are buying are selling. So employee advocacy is a key thing to support authenticity, because you have people that experience the product that you're selling, which is a career, and they're saying what their experience is. So we need, and this is something that at Jerónimo we do a lot. We feature a lot of our employees at the site. Our website is just with employees, with stories about employees, because that is the we sell careers, we sell stories, we sell people stories, and so the people stories are what corroborate the narrative that we are selling. And so having people talk about their experience in the company is key to establish authenticity. And also, I think another key issue is when we talk about big words like sustainability, you need to show that this is true. So you need proof points. Words by themselves, they are worthless. But if you
Hmm.
corroborate them with actions, with KPIs, then it's something that's real. And when you are able to take a KPI and build a story around it, then it's even more magical, because you get an emotional response on the other side, which is what you want to achieve in marketing and in employer branding, is the emotional investment of the person that wants to work at your company. Just because, even though you're selling the same job, or a very similar job to the company next door. So I would add that.
No, really,
Completely
really.
agree.
Because I think the stories are what makes people really staying longer or going
Yeah.
away quicker to other companies. And I think, yeah, the job is the same, but then the relationships, the
Yeah.
connections that you form, the stories that you create will be completely different. Touching on that, I think it's a good segue. Like a lot of companies complain they don't have budget for this, but how any company can like create those stories. I think you guys already touched on it.
You
Um,
just need a cell phone at the end of the day.
Yeah, for sure.
Tell us more.
So there I would like just to share my personal story, because I think it's really interesting. On one of my previous companies, uh, I was hired to manage the employer brand. that company. It was an international company, a multinational company, and once I was there, I found it really, really strange that they had amazing videos from the spaces, from everything, and they had so few likes. Nobody liked the content, and I found it really strange. And I just found it strange before my first day because as soon as I arrived at the company, I was summoned, and most of us are, to HR. And the person from HR, she called me and said, Miguel, so you have here this this bunch of leaflets. So you have to read this, and this, and you have a room over there to read it. So I was there in the room and I was reading through it all, and it said, you cannot do this, you cannot do this, you cannot do this, you cannot do this, you cannot do this. So, my God, I at that moment I understood why things were as they were. Nobody liked because they were scared. They were scared to death that if they liked this content, someone would come up to them and say, "You cannot do that." And as I was going into the company for a top management position, I had the possibility to go to the leader of the company and say, "Well, I cannot work like this." But for most people, they hadn't that opportunity. So my first step in that company was to change the digital policy. And so I completely erased all you cannot do, and obviously I say you should do what Inês was saying about advocacy. But imagine if you have a company where you have 20 years of this same culture where you cannot do something, you need to answer your questions. The answer for that problem was I needed to take small steps. So if you don't have a budget, it doesn't matter, because imagine employer branding is not everything is about having the greatest strategy in the world. You can do tactical things. Sorry, are you okay? So you need to do tactical things also. And so my first idea, you know what it was? I had a problem with the job adverts that company had. All the job adverts were always about spaces. They didn't have any people. So the first thing that I did was going to I went to talk to the leader of the company, and I said, "What do you think if I use someone from this job position as a reference for a job opening that we will have?" And he said, "Okay, you can do it, no problem." And like Inês said, mobile phone, take a picture, do the job ad, create obviously the context for the job ad. But that wasn't the key issue, because the possibility that people wouldn't like would be the same. So the thing is that HR was right on the pathway to the canteen of that company, and we had like a place where we could put information right in front of the HR. And what I did is I placed all the job adverts, I printed, and I placed all the job ads in that board in front of human resources. The response was tremendous, because imagine people would stop, they would see that person and say, "Look, oh look, it's Inês, it's Gonçalo, and they would say the name. And what happened next is the greatest transformation that I ever saw in any company that I worked in. Imagine the door to human resources, it weighed 20 tons, because human resources was all about firing people and have opening like legal procedures. And it was really, really hard to go into that company. But afterwards, people would knock on the door and say, "Sorry, I have someone for that open position over there. Can I share the CV with you guys?" And that was the start of transformation. This had zero cost, and this was a tactical action that we took in regards to employer branding, of that company. Yeah, just a small example. It's real. What happened is real. This was real. I won the employer branding award here in Portugal in 2019 because of this project. So just so you see, the engagement rose 300% in 6 months, just because of these small actions that we did.
Congrats, Miguel.
Yeah,
You bring not only like more candidates probably with those referrals, but also more engaged between people and a
for
better
sure.
connection with HR. So I think it's a win-win-win. Very nice. Inês, do you have similar examples?
Some, I mean, we in Jerónimo Martins, we're currently more focused on, we recruit a lot young talent, and so everything that's regarding young talent, we always have previous participants representing the program. That's non-negotiable for us. Regardless of the program, whether it's a long duration or a short duration, we always have someone that participated in the edition before participating in the campaign. So that's something that we always do. But also we started doing that internally as well, because there is a big component to employer branding that is internal. So we need to, there's the attraction, which is very important, but also within the company, you need to sustain retention with employer branding. And so there's an example that we're doing in Jerónimo Martins is, well, we're still in the process in some aspects, but I think at the end of the day, the main issue when we talk about employer branding is that companies don't, people want to work with people. And of course, a company is made of people, but you want to work with people. You want to work with that person. And especially internally, you know who you want to work with. And so that's the shift that we're trying to make as well, that we need to start recruiting people. I want someone for my team. I don't want someone for category management. I want someone for my team. And I think that's a shift that we are still in the process of doing, but we also do a lot of things already. So we have a lot of, even for internal recruitment, we use a lot of people that are in that position to explain what the position is, so that other people that don't know so much about the position are able to apply with more confidence, because we are very big. We have a lot of different areas, different functions, and so it's not very easy to always to know what the guy next door does. So we have that commitment as well to use a lot of internal people to explain what the job is, so that other people can relate and even contact. We always give the name of the recruiter, for example. That's a small thing, but it makes a difference, because you want to know who is recruiting you. It's not just a general Jerónimo Martins recruiting. It's Mariana, it's Felipe, it's João. It's important to put a name in the process and in the functions and in the hiring managers. So that's something that we do as well.
Yeah, no, very good point, because even internal mobility, it still put pressure on people, right? It's almost changing a job even internally. So I think having that personal touch, I think it's very
especially when you're very big and you cannot know everyone. So
yeah, it's impossible. If they will know everyone, they will be already probably in a higher position. So I think employer branding here, and moving a little bit forward on the conversation, ending up to have several touch points, right? We have the talent attraction side, we have the communication side, we have a little bit the marketing side. And for me, one of the things that we always struggle, or that I always struggle when I worked in house, was what was the role of the internal communication in the employer branding. And I'm very curious to see what is your opinion, Miguel and Inês, regarding this, where the internal communication gets along with the employer branding and where they should be completely separated.
Go, Inês.
It's a tough question. I think internal communications are a vehicle for employer branding. At least that's how I see it and how we operate in Jerónimo Martins, because employer branding it's more so about strategy. Obviously, there's and I think internal communication comes in the execution, because internally, of course, because when employer branding is it's about employee experience, and employee experience is deeply rooted on processes within the company culture as well, leadership, management. That is fundamental, but it's harder to change. So it's culture, but it's also a lot about processes, about HR processes. For example, if I say that you are able to grow at Jerónimo Martins, this means I have processes that support this growth, that performance management, potential assessment, etc. And so when we communicate these processes, they need to be anchored in employer branding messages, so that this is a puzzle that is not completely disconnected. You are always painting a picture. Anything that you do internally or externally, you're painting a picture. When you're doing it internally, you need to guarantee that everything that you're doing and you're offering to your employees is sustained in the messages of employer branding, because you want them to feel, to experience that the promise that you're doing when you're attracting is the promise that you're delivering when they're inside. And so I think internal communication is a key aspect to this, because they are the ones that are able to work with all the areas that speak to the employee, which is not, it's mainly HR, but not only HR, and guarantee that what is being communicated is aligned with the messages of the employer brand. So I see them as a pivotal element to because to materialize the employer brand inside, even though, because sometimes it's not very easy to an employee to say in 3 or 4 main messages what it's like to work at a company. And that's what employer branding does. You look at everything, the touch points, the culture, everything, and you mash it up into a big puzzle. And you need to constantly be reinforcing that this is the piece of this puzzle. And so that's the message, and that's the role of internal communication, to make sure that everyone understands how this specific process or initiative stands within the promise of employer branding.
Cool. Makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. Miguel, would you?
Yeah, you know, regarding this question, this is a really interesting question because for the past 2 years, I've had several different discussions with the guys from EVB. EVB is Employer Branding Brazil. It's the same as what I created here in 2015 in Portugal, the Portuguese community of employer branding. And in Brazil, you have like a huge trend that still hasn't translated here in Portugal, I think, but there's a lot of confusion in Brazil that employer branding is internal communication. So there's a huge flow of people that really think that employer branding is internal communication. And like Inês said, there is some areas that are really, really up to the guys in internal communication to bring forth so that everyone knows about the employer brand. When we are talking about the employer brand, we need to understand that mostly employer brand, like Inês said, is about messaging. And so normally the name that you give is the employer value proposition that you have. So you need to understand what makes you different from your competitors. And here I'm going to be a little bit harsh because in my experience as a consultant and we talk to a lot of different companies. And one of the first questions that I ask to potential clients that I have is, so tell me who your talent competitors are. And you, Gonçalo, probably as well. Most companies have two different answers. One of them would be, I don't know. And that's great, no problem. The second one is worse because the second one is companies tend to confuse when we ask about competitors, they normally tend to say the brand competitors, so the commercial brand competitors. So if I'm Coca-Cola, they will say Pepsi, and if I'm Microsoft, they'll say Apple. Normally, they can be talent competitors, but most of the times they are not talent competitors. For instance, Coca-Cola Euro Pacific Partners is located in Azeitão. Pepsi is not there. Small Compal is not there. Normally, you have talent competitors that are really geographical. They are in the surrounding of that company, and most companies do not know who their talent competitors here are. They do not know where their employees are leaving, why they are leaving. So this, I would say, Gonçalo, is the one of the first questions when we are talking about employer branding and the role of internal communications is also about this. You need to understand to root the messaging that you are having internally to all your employees. You need to make sure that it's the right messages, like Inês was saying. And this is not an easy task to be done because if you don't know who your competitors are, you probably are saying the wrong things to your employees. You are not having the right triggers to make them stay in your company. Be it, for instance, that uh, location, for instance, sometimes it's location, sometimes it's, we are always focused that it's all about salary is still the main point. Yeah, it's still on top, but it's not the only one. People tend to choose for salary, but they tend to stay for other reasons. So salary is one of the first things that people look when they are looking for an opportunity, but then they stay at the company for all different reasons. And just to say, because Inês mentioned this previously, I, I'm a huge fan of a book from Tracy Mallet that's called the Employee Experience. I highly recommend it for you guys to read it. And Tracy Mallet said something in that book that always stood with me, is that when you have someone that enters your company in the first 3 months, it's not it's not real that people leave the company because of leadership. That tends to occur afterwards. So in the beginning, when people come into a company, the main reason why they leave is something that is called the gap of expectations. So you build the expectation throughout the recruitment process, and when people arrive at the company, there is or there is not a gap of expectations. Employer branding is all about reducing the gap of expectations. It's transmitting the real employee experience, what it's like, so that people know beforehand, before they join the company, what it's like to work in the company. And this, Gonçalo, is always one of the main questions that I have for people like you that work outside of the company, trying to attract, trying to recruit. Your role is super critical throughout the process. So employer branding should really be talking to companies like yours, to you guys that have a role. You interact with candidates throughout the process, and all the messaging that you guys should be transmitting to candidates should also be worked with employer branding from the companies. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, 100% agree, because it's very nice to say, oh, this company is amazing, you'll find everything, but then if they leave after 1 month, it's my reputation that is on stake, and it's bad for the candidates, bad for the company, it's bad for everyone. And I think that gap between the expectations is really the key that employer brand is trying to solve in the attraction side of things,
Yeah.
and then that helps to retain them in the long term if it's well done. So I also think that's a very good point, and I think a good segue, Inês, for the next question. That is, in your opinion, what are the biggest challenge to maintain a good reputation, a good employer brand as the company grows? Because I think Jerónimo Martins is a very good example on that. That he has been keeping the reputation quite good. So how you do it, and how you keep involving your employer brand?
Well, I think the main thing is the authenticity sides. If you are, if you're, and I think Jerónimo Martins is a good example. Jerónimo Martins is very value driven. We have core values, and they are non-negotiables, and so they imply that we do the right thing, that we, that there's an ethics and a moral code, very very strong moral code that dictates all the decisions. And so this means that. As an employer brand, we also are aligned with this, and so we are very true to what we say. And of course, the company grows, but we are so big, that we're not doubling in size, and so we're growing a lot. But the consistency is there. I mean, maybe for a startup, this question is a bit. It's not so easy to maintain, but for us, it's not so much a challenge, because, like I said, we know who we are. The identity is very very. It's a strong identity, and we are very mindful of that identity, so it's not an issue. I would say that the being true is the key aspect of this, and this is something that we do. Of course, when we are selling a career, you have an aspirational side that you're selling, and this is something that we do a lot in Jerónimo Martins. We also say, look, this is not pink. This is a tough business. We work a lot, and this is something, even if you go on our website, we have that. It's written in there. Anyone can see it, because we don't run away from it. We embrace it. And we know that all jobs are not for everyone. You need to know if this is a job for you. And we don't want someone to come with an illusion. This is all rainbows and unicorns. And it's not. It's very good, yes, but it's also hard. And so you need to know. And this is fundamental. I think you don't need to be afraid of losing consistency if you are very straightforward with what you're offering. And so I think that's That's how you keep evolving in the employer brand, because it's always evolving, of course, but you need to not look just at the good side. Usually what evolves is the good side, you know.
Yeah.
Also the because some bad sides or things that could be considered not as good are inherent to the business. So that's something that I cannot change, and I need to embrace it. I need to accept it and be straightforward about it. So I think that's it. If you're true to who you are and you don't sugarcoat things, then your path to growth and involvement it will be okay.
Yeah, yeah, it's natural because I think
Yeah.
the more you say no to certain things, it's the yes that you are saying to the things that you really want. So I think
And you have credibility to the good things because you assume that there are also some not so good things. So
yeah, that's bring the authenticity that we were mentioning.
discussing.
Yeah, yeah, very very good points, Miguel. We talked about the present, the future, and now I want to ask you, how do you see employer branding in the future? How this will evolve?
Yeah, it's a really hard question, Gonzalo, and I would say that most people, almost 100%, would talk about the role of artificial intelligence in employer branding, and I think there is a role. I think the role is not they will take the helm of employer branding. I think they will have a side role. They will be the co-pilot of all co-creation of everything that needs to be done, and I think the main reason is because, and this I strongly believe in this. Good employer branding should be rooted on data. Data, I think, is the key aspect of everything within employer branding. And unfortunately, I see lots of company that still don't work with data. And when I speak about this, Gonzalo, I think it's if you talk to most people in human resources and you do like a simple questions, for instance, how many people entered your career page? Human resources people do not know this.
I have no
They
idea.
tend to don't have information about how many people entered, who those people were, how they arrived to the landing page. This is all employer branding issues that need to be. This is data. You understand? This is data. And so when we are and artificial intelligence is really, really good at looking at data and doing the review of all that huge data that we have. Imagine in the future uh, what I would like to see, and this is the future here in Portugal, because there are some geographies where this is the present, it's not the future. But the thing is, if you keep an eye on all the data that you gather throughout the recruitment process, you have the opportunity to predict lots of stuff. So instead of, for instance, during the recruitment stage. So you know the profiles that looked at the landing page, you know the profiles that applied to the the job offer. If you did psychometric testing, you have information about the psychological profile of the candidates. During the onboarding, you have information about the candidates. Then you have the performance evaluation, all these data, and you have the high performers. So if you have all the data throughout these touch points, and you see the high performers had these aspects that were the same throughout all of them, you can predict who would be a good fit to your company. And I won't take long, Gonzalo, but just to say this, employer branding is not really about attracting the right people. It's more about rejecting the wrong people. I think this is the best. I will give you an example. When we think about the beginnings of employer branding, the best campaign that comes to my mind was not an employer branding campaign. It had nothing to do with employer branding, but the result was really that it worked as the best employer branding campaign that I can think of. And that was when Steve Jobs returned to Apple and he did the presentation about the new marketing strategy of Apple. He created and he developed, he said, well, if you think about Nike, nobody thinks about shoes. They think about sport, and it's a way of life. And so in Apple, we need to do the same thing. It's not about bits and bolts. It's not about the computers that we have. And then he started and he launched the campaign. I don't know if you guys recall the campaign, but it was about having the outsiders, the people that don't think, and the claim. And when I think about good employer branding, it's all about this. The claim said everything. The claim was think different. This was not about employer branding, but if you look at that claim, what type of people do you think they were trying to attract? What it was all about, that those two words. In two words, they knew exactly. If anyone looked at that, they knew that they needed to have to be irreverent. They needed to be outside of the box. It was all about that, and it was not thought out to be an employer branding campaign. And just a quick notice, the best employer branding nowadays, it's all about what Inês said, authenticity. And most people think badly when some leaders are really authentic. And I'm not going to judge if it's good or if it's bad, but imagine Jeff Bezos, throughout time, has sent several has done several interviews. And when you think about working at Amazon, throughout times he said some things that were really, really awful. He said, you will be working 12 hours a day. During those 12 hours a day, you have only 15-minute stops, one in the morning and one in the afternoon. So it was a terrible working experience. But it was all about being honest. That was the experience that people would find at Amazon. uh, Elon Musk was exactly the same thing. A few years back, he wrote a Christmas letter to all employees. At the moment, nobody knew really well Elon Musk, so we all thought that Elon Musk was the guy that was going to take us to Mars, and it was all about sustainability and getting greener, and the electric cars and the space travels. And in that moment, this was after COVID, he sent a letter to the employees, and where he said that we know that this is really hard work, and we really believe that to get things done, we need to have people within our facilities. So there's no remote work, there's no hybrid work. It's all about having people inside our facilities. And he said, I do not believe that we can have a culture if we don't have people working alongside one another. This is something that for some people is not well seen, but it's real. It's what people will find within those companies. So just to end, I think that good employer branding in the future is about this. It's about having real messages, and having real messages that are based on data, and data that is collected from inside the company.
Very, very complete answer. Thank you, Miguel. I think data, it's the future because it really helps us to drive decisions. Inês, do you have anything to add?
I think Miguel did a good job with this question, but I agree. I agree. At the end of the day, I agree, and I agree that it's more and more so. Data is fundamental. I think everything that's social media, etc., is also a trend. Communication is key. You know, if you don't speak, you don't exist. If you don't appear, you don't exist. So I think there's a path there as well. But for sure, AI will help a lot in data. So I think that's the road ahead.
Gonçalo, just before you close, and because I know most of the audience is really keen on hire, on your own business, and just to close out on recruitment, because and this is a message that I send out to recruiters as well. To have messages like we're hiring, like LinkedIn loves to say, it's a really bad employer branding message. It doesn't have anything special, and it's really, really bad. So what I think, and I don't know your opinion about this, and you, Gonzalo, are also a participant on this podcast as well, and I would love to have your answer as well. Imagine what I learned in recruitment is really that, for instance, platforms that we don't use a lot here in Portugal, but for instance, Indeed provides a really good way on writing job adverts. Why? Because it's based on keywords. For it to work, you need to have the right keywords to get things going, and to get good results. And so human resources people that are watching right now, you should really use, because there are, if you go to Indeed, for instance, you have like recruitment insights where you get all the keywords for the roles that you are hiring. And so be super, super strategic on the way you write your job adverts. I think this is the message that I would love to end, is you need to get better job adverts, because every single day the Portuguese employer branding community, I have a job portal with all the open vacancies that exist in employer branding, and I look at thousands of job openings in employer branding, and some job adverts are terrible, 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 terrible. So we need to improve. We need to do a better job at writing job adverts as well.
Yeah, no, 100% agree, because who does the job ads are recruiters and they have zero expertise in copywriting. So I think or recruiters are training on copywriting, or copywriters should start to write job descriptions. So I think that's my advice on that. Before we close, I would like to do a very quick game with you guys, a very short one, and then a closing question as well. So I'll do a red flag, green flag game. So I will throw a question, and you tell me what you think in this scenario, if you think it's a red flag for employer branding or a green flag as well. So let's start let's start with Miguel, actually. So posting weekly, we are hiring, banners on LinkedIn, but without employee stories.
Red flag.
Obviously. And maybe this one for Inês. Doing a recruitment process in less than 3 weeks with 3 rounds of interviews.
With 3 rounds of interviews, I think, well, I'm going to say yellow flag because it depends, but I would go more for red flag than green flag, because it's too much probably, but it depends. It depends on, for example, the young talent. We have a lot of interviews. The process is longer. When it's a cashier job, 0 cents. Speed is key. It depends. So I would go with that one.
Yeah. Okay.
But with that being said, shorter usually is better. So least minimum possible.
Yeah. Perfect. We got a new flag as well here in the game. Next one to Miguel.
Always innovating.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So leaders that sharing authentic company stories on LinkedIn, even if they are not completely perfect.
Green.
That is a green flag for sure. But imagine what I don't like, and you didn't mention that, is if someone structured the message so it really looked authentic, but it wasn't really authentic. If it's really authentic, yes, green flag. If it's a little mashup from the communication company, yellow flag, like Inês said. Yeah.
Exactly. Always with a justification, because we are lacking a lot of context on this.
Yeah.
Cool. Last one for Inês. So a job description with 12, 15 bullet points and doesn't mention salary.
Red.
Very red.
Even though I know, I think less is more. If you go too long, people get lost. So in it, so you need to be concise. This is what we're looking for. This is the goal, and it goes to this other issues like gender parity, because women are a lot less likely to apply for a job that they don't fit 100% of the qualifications, versus a manager is like 60%. So there are a lot of issues with that. But I would say less is more. The salary, always a plus to have. At Jerónimo, we don't usually put it, so and we have a reason for it. But I would say the better outcome is if you're okay with putting it and reduce specifications.
Good. Thanks for the explanation as well. I think salary, it's always tricky and always depends in a lot of factors to have it or not.
But Gonçalo, 2026 is going to be mandatory. I believe most companies should be working on that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So we need the employer branding will involve for that for sure, because of laws, but we still have 1 year to get ready.
Yeah.
So just a closing question, just to wrap up. I think Miguel, you already gave one, but if you want to mention another one, you are free to do it. So if you could give one big piece of advice to any company that is looking to improve their employer brand this year, what that would be?
Read more. Know how to write. That is the main issue that I see in most people. People read less. If they read less, they write poorly. They don't know how to write properly, and that I think is the worst case for any employer branding person, is if they don't know how to write. It's not even about creativity, because you can be creative, but if you don't know how to write, your job will be a lot worse.
Yeah, creativity without consistency and
Yeah.
without putting the ideas out there, it's not worth it. Cool, cool. Ines, any final remarks, any big advices that you can share with us?
I think for someone that is starting to develop employer brand, I think one key issue is speak with your employees. Because if you want to sell an experience, because this is what we sell an experience of working at a company, you need to know the perception of the people that work inside in your company, because they are the people that will give you the answers to what you have to sell out to attract other people. So the answer is inside. You need to go to your employees first, see how they feel about the company, how the experience is perceived within the company, so that you can, one, understand what you need to improve, two, sell externally who you are as an employer, and be able to attract the right people for your company, the ones that want to work with you.
Cool, cool. So I think this is very easy to do. So we just need to speak
Yeah.
with our employees and learn how to write.
Yeah.
Primary school knowledge.
Yeah.
So the recipe is here. Thanks a lot, Inês and Miguel, for your knowledge, because for me it was super useful. I hope for the ones that are watching, it's useful as well. We could go way deeper on this topic. I think this was just the surface of it. I always say this when I talk about employer branding, because it's such a big topic that we need, like, I don't know, 3 hours to go
For
through each
sure.
topic. So maybe more will come. One more time, thanks a lot for your availability, and hopefully see you again. And thanks a lot, everyone.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much, Gonçalo.
It
Thank
was
you.
a pleasure.